Hey, team players, and welcome. We always love when there's comments already preloaded for us to go and talk about. Today, like every other day, we're going to be giving you great information about how to win your leagues, how to dominate. And, this is week 8, Bob. This is the time where rubber meets the road. It doesn't really matter where your record is to this point. We can still salvage it, but we get a little bit past this, it gets a little bit ugly. So, team players, as you do recall, if you're watching this on a replay or if you're watching this live, start your answers or your comments with either quick hitter for QH or deep dive so that we know how much time to give it to appropriately. That being said, if you ever want us to follow up with a special comment or question and we are not live at the time, feel free to leave that in a previous recording and we will get back to you. That's how we operate here. We really do believe it's important to talk to every single person who is reaching out to us. Just be patient. We will get to you. And we do it the order of doing the deep dives first. And then, or the deep dives are all going to get answered with much more information. And we throw the quick hitters in as well. Obviously, a quick hitter being a much quicker piece of information coming your way. So, Bob, how you doing today? What are we feeling about it?
Man, today was rough. I'm not going to lie. But I love to see George. I love to see George, Mad Max, Cash, Steve, Tyson, Alejandro, all in the chat. We're hyped too. We got a lot of information to go through today. And, if we do have a period of time between questions, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the thoughts we had yesterday about Chuba and Ramondre, Otten and Laporta, and about Javonte Williams as well. So if we have time, I would like to get to those questions as well, or to talk about some of those players if we don't get a chance to talk about them as part of anybody's questions.
Fair enough. So starting off here with George, non-PPR, that's a fancy way of saying standard. DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Waddle, Thomas Jr., McMillan, Hopkins. Bob, who you starting? Two of those three, or two of them? Not two of them. Two of them.
All right. So my initial reaction is to want to start Amari Cooper and BTJ with my third guy being JSN. That's my initial lean on those three guys. Joe, give your initial lean, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about what we have going on there.
Yeah, so when we look here at the receiver room, I was actually kind of surprised about how this week is shaping up. One of the things is that this week has a little bit more variance than other weeks in terms of some games being projected to be blowouts that really haven't happened in quite a bit. Like, for instance, this is the first time Denver has been projected to be more than a touchdown favorite. It's happened one time in the last 3 years other than this week. So a lot of weird stuff happening in that department. So I just say that up front as when I got to look some stuff up, people are putting themselves in other categories. That being said, when we look at this week, I really, really do like this group in general. But if I have to make the pick of these ones for a non-PPR, it's all about touchdowns and yardage. So who do I think is going to get the ultimate most touchdowns and yardage? I can't trust Chicago because, quite frankly, I don't trust their quarterback. Buffalo spreads the ball around too much, so the fact that Amari Cooper is going to get 9 catches doesn't really help me. I do think Waddle is a very strong candidate to get in the end zone for all the reasons I said before about how I think Miami is going to have to ball out with Tua to save that man's job. So Waddle is going to be one of my selections. Bob, you've been hammering all week about the problem of returning from London and Jacksonville, quite frankly, in general. So I'm going to go with Waddle and Njigba because both McMillan and Hopkins, I want to give a week to see what their new situation is before I put them in my starting lineup. So knowing that this is a standard league, my answer is JSN and Waddle.
Yeah, and to that end too, when you look at the numbers, especially on Jackson Smith, George, he's running a lot of routes, and Seattle is passing the ball the most. And when you look at what their Buffalo is doing defensively, that Buffalo is one of those teams that they've been kind of all over the markets in terms of what they've been doing. So there are games where we've seen them run a lot, and we talked about this with Darkside, is that they've been moving as a team. It feels like they've been moving with Joe Brady's offense to more running. And so when the game, when push comes to shove, it feels like we're going to see a little bit more of that if they have a lead. And when it comes to Buffalo as well, offensively, Amari Cooper didn't have a lot of routes to run last week. And he looked to Keon Coleman and looked to the other people on the offense to know where he was supposed to be, because it was a short week, him moving from Cleveland to Buffalo. And so we've got to think to ourselves that there's a good chance that his route tree or his routes run improves this week. And I am willing, the reason I say a guy like Amari Cooper is on my radar this week is because when you look at what he's capable of doing, and Joe, we've gone over this a couple of times when it comes to Amari Cooper, is that he's a capable wide receiver, a talented wide receiver that is plagued by dropped passes. I mean, this is not something that's new for Amari Cooper in his history. Seattle's secondary is or was banged up to a degree. But when we look at what Amari Cooper's expectations are, right, is that he hasn't really been doing much with what he's given. So the expectations are really low for a guy like Amari Cooper when he was in Cleveland. We were expecting to get, maybe 10, 11, 12 points out of Amari Cooper. And some games he was able to give it to us. Some games he was not able to give it to us. When we look at what he's, if we were to rank these players, Joe, based upon what they're going to be facing this week, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba, out of the three guys that we mentioned, Smith and Jigba, Amari Cooper, Brian Thomas, actually has a leg up. He's expected to get more points than the previous weeks in terms of routes run, right? More points per routes run. So the expectation is a little bit more, that JSN would be a reasonable start this week. And for anybody who's curious about JSN, he runs out of the slot. And so he's getting primarily all of his receptions in the slot. When it comes to Buffalo, they're perfectly capable of getting beat there. So I think that it's safe to say that JSN is a good play this week. And when it comes to BTJ, I do understand, and like I've been sharing with everybody this week, the fact that you're coming back from over the pond after 2 weeks, adjusting to your schedule, that is going to be tough. But Green Bay is a very, very good team, and Green Bay will make mistakes, but Green Bay is a very, very good team. And I feel, and this is a gut feeling, but it's based upon what we have seen Jacksonville play like and what we've seen Green Bay play like, that there's a very good chance that Jacksonville will not be in this game come the third quarter.
Nope.
And so in order to get back in this game, there's going to need to be a push towards throwing the ball. And so while BTJ is probably not going to hit his expected points per route run, there's a very good chance that he might get something more. Maybe that's a touchdown. That's what you're looking for, George. So while you're not looking for the receptions and you're looking for the touchdowns, I think that the three guys on my radar would be JSN, BTJ, and Amari Cooper for a touchdown. And I think more likely that BTJ and Amari Cooper will be getting a touchdown more than JSN. But I think that all three of them are good options, with Waddle being my fourth and McMillan being my fifth.
And there you go. And guys, that's a perfect example of what a deep dive is. So this is what we do for, obviously, for a deep dive. If you're doing a quick hit, we'll give you a much quicker answer. And we do this.
We see Para
we do this
for as well. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry about that.
Yeah. We do this so Bob doesn't have to read everyone that's commenting to us, so that we can get to all the quick hits quickly. And so that also to respect your time. If you only have a couple minutes to be in here, we can't guarantee you're going to get to your quick hit right away, because we do give information. But the end of the day is that way it's not like a deep dive for the super answer. You're sitting and waiting for it the whole time. So we're first George's answer we treat as a deep dive. Second one we're going to treat as a quick hit to give you guys an example of this. So if Kittle doesn't play, Bob, are we starting Kmet, Jonnu Smith, Noah Fant? If I need to drop one of the receivers from the list above to add JMO, who should I drop? So quick hitter, Bob.
All right. So my initial lean here is start Kmet. My initial lean is start Kmet. And if I was dropping to drop one of the receivers from the list above to add JMO, again, JMO is not a player that is super, super reliable. But if I were to drop any of them, I don't think I would.
Drop one of those receivers?
I don't think I would.
Yeah, I don't think I would either.
I don't think I would drop any of those, George.
And fundamentally, that's the answer. Yeah. Kmet is the one you would play if Kittle doesn't play, and you shouldn't drop any of them for JMO here. So, guys, make sure you guys let us know what your quick hits or deep dives are. We also love that the community is helping and sharing with each other. Cash talking up to Steve and vice versa. So, that being said, guys, if anyone has given us a question that is a deep dive, let us know. We'll dive into it and review. We're going to treat all of these unless explicitly written as quick hitters. So would you send Brian Thomas, a third or ninth round keeper, for Waddle, Lamar, Chase, Hurt? We had this question yesterday, didn't we, Bob?
And I'll touch on this again because this was a question that I did want to revisit. And Joe, I think that when it comes to things like dynasty leagues, like keeper leagues, and this is for anybody in a dynasty or a keeper league right now, that the value of a guy like Tyreek and the value of a guy like Kupp has a limitation, right? All players have limits, but when you look at the age and the injury history and the situations of players, the question more so it comes down to, am I playing for today or am I playing for this year and next year and a year beyond? Right.
That's right.
So where I look at this trade at, and the reason, Mad Max, that I would probably not do this trade, but also, there's a reason why I would. The reason I wouldn't do this trade is because you do have two really young wide receivers there that will carry a decent amount of value. Now, Matt, and you might still be in the chat there, Matt, if you are in the stretch here where you're okay moving on from BTJ and Waddle and you're okay moving into maybe 2 more years of Cooper Kupp, maybe 2 or 3 more years of Tyreek where he's in his heyday of skill sets, I'm okay with doing something like this because I do think that the movement from Lamar to Hurts is not too far apart. But again, what I want to know is, what is your goal with a trade like this? Because you're giving
the only reason you would do a trade like this, Max, is if you're completely in win now mode, which I get it. If you're in win now mode, putting Tyreek on your team, this is the time to do it in Cooper Kupp. But Bob's right, there is certainly risk moving forward. If this was a normal, even taking the keeper quantities out of it, I believe it's a fair trade.
Yeah.
You are taking a tremendous amount of risk, though, by taking on Tyreek and Kupp because of injury reasons. And that just has to be known. Clearly, you're okay with doing it by submitting it. But given everything added up here, I still would not lean on doing it because the upside of Miami, you're still on the bus with Waddle. I like Lamar more than Hurts. And I don't want to get rid of Thomas. I think you can get more for Thomas, is the long story short. So, Matt, that's where you ultimately settle on this.
Yeah, especially if he's a keeper. Hey, Cash, what's up? So, I know the smart thing to do is to wait until next week to fire up Puka. I don't think they would play him if he's not 100 when they need him the rest of the season. If he starts, I'm flexing him. So, what I've heard today,
that's fine.
When I had my lunch break today, I was looking online, and I did hear that they were hoping to activate Puka today, which is definitely far ahead of where they said they were going to activate him a couple days ago. So that has me concerned that, especially when we look back, Joe, to a couple other players that had injuries leading up into a game and then coming back into that game, they didn't have their full complement of snaps, or they didn't, and they just want to get a player used to what's happening. I fear that might be what we're dealing with Puka. But my gut feeling
that's fair, but I need to put a statement out there about tonight's game specifically. Tonight being the Rams hosting Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
This is the line in the sand for the Rams tonight. If they win tonight, they ain't trading anyone. They're going for this thing for the gusto. If they don't, that's not necessarily going to be a true statement. Tonight is their line in the sand. They've clearly drawn it. Puka was a limited participant in practice yesterday. Now, granted, this is how vague they've made limited participation on the injury reports. If you are on the bike on the side of the field, you count as a limited participant. So a limited participant can be that all the way up to doing everything except for one element of the practice, taking off a particular session or something. So there's a ton of range there. But the thing that makes me stand out the most, and I would play Puka in my flex. Correction, it's Thursday Night Football. You don't play him in your flex. You play him as the starting receiver in case one of your other receivers gets a freak injury. That's just a rule of Thursday Night Football. But I'm not afraid with putting him in my lineup. I know they're going all in. Puka and Kupp are their two dudes. They don't want Kupp to get hurt again, so they don't want to give him 87 targets. So I want Puka. I think you're going to get good volume. I think tonight's game is going to be a lot closer than the records indicate. Not sure the Rams are going to pull it off, but I definitely think it's going to be within a touchdown. My heart wants the Rams to win, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
If I were to play, for me, logistically speaking, with the way that Minnesota plays, I think I'm more inclined to play Cooper Kupp if I had Cooper Kupp tonight, which I do, which I'm playing him, than Puka, just because of the way that Minnesota runs their defense. I don't know how it will benefit Puka.
Oh, dude, one-on-one coverage with Puka is going to be a great thing all day. Both of them, really.
But the thing is, Joe, is that, I'm not sure they're running one-on-one coverage the whole time here.
So it's basically coming down to reading the second half of your question here, Cash. You also have Mooney and D-Hop, but something in your gut says that he's a go early in the week. It could look great. If not, D-Hop busts the whole thing up for it. So the thing with Hopkins is that the first week with a new team tends not to be super stellar compared to what you get after the fact. So of the three, treating this as a three-player start him or sit him, I'm going with Puka over both Mooney and D-Hop.
Yeah, and Joe, to that end, Minnesota plays a lot of zone coverage. They don't really play a lot of man. So I'm really...
It's zone off the bat, but because of their blitzes, it ends up being one-on-one coverage, regardless of where you call it man or zone. However
I get what you're saying, but it's not true. It's not true, man. So I'm definitely not... I like both options, but my lean is towards Kupp over Puka, but I do like Puka as well.
No, but it's not between Kupp or Puka. His decision is Puka, Mooney, or Hop.
What I'm saying to you, though, is that I am more inclined to not play Puka than I am to play Puka this week, especially knowing the injury news that we had saying that he's not coming back and then he's coming back. I think it's very possible that Puka throws a 5 points in your slot or in your wide receiver position. And I think if you have better options, healthier options, that it might be better.
So would you take either Mooney or Hop?
I mean, Mooney's been declining in terms of what he has. So if it's between Puka, Mooney, and Hop, I would lean Puka. But it's really tough. It's really tough. It's really tough for me on that one, Cash.
Love you, Steve. So glad you became an official team player by clicking subscribe. To everyone else out there, let's do it. Click like and subscribe, and we'll be with you. And again, we're just banging this all down in order. Your team is stacked. You're 6-1. I got it. Yeah, all that good stuff, Cash. We're all there with you. For Tyson, should I start Laporta or Ertz? I'm 100% on Laporta with JMO out. Ertz with Mariota could be a good set down central. Quite frankly, I think the person who benefits the most out of Mariota playing is Washington's kicker because he's going to play a lot. So I know it benefited me last week burying a team as I had Washington's kicker come up and they kicked all those late field goals. But Tyson, for me, this is a pretty easy one. I'm going Laporta over Ertz. How about you, Bob?
For me, I don't want to get too much into Laporta, but Laporta's only had 15 targets this year.
Yeah,
and even when Jameis was down, it seems like they're heading into other directions. And Tennessee plays the tight end pretty well, although they haven't faced a lot of great tight ends, but they have faced a decent amount. I don't know if Laporta lines up well. The narrative is there, Joe. The narrative is definitely there to play Laporta.
Mm-hmm.
I think my initial lean today on Thursday is Laporta, but I'm not excited about it because I do think that Ertz and Laporta do have similar floors, and Laporta has a decentish better ceiling. I don't know if you're going to get much out of these two guys today or this week.
Well,
I don't know.
I got to tell you this way. I'm in a very deep league with 3 flexes. Laporta's one of my flexes this week, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, hologram. Yeah,
Alejandro, you're 100% right. Tonight is the all-in game for the Rams, as I said a little bit earlier. And you're exactly right. They're to go all in or go all out. And quite frankly, for all of you team players who've been with this for the last week and a half, that's going to be the phone call I give the Comcast. They're either giving me a new router to set this thing up better, or I am going to be all in Verizon. That's where we're at.
Fun fact, though,
Steve,
I have heard rumors, Joe, that Cooper Kupp may come to Pittsburgh if things don't work out for the Rams.
Dude, so, I don't care about rumors. I mean, all it is half the league, if you're on a losing record, your entire roster's for sale because, quite frankly, it's clickbait, and most people are just bad writers and they need to do clickbait. It's part of the cell phone generation, which I'm part of and I hate it.
So, Steve, PPR here, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 1 super flex, 2 flex, 1 defense, 5-2 with the next 2 games. Very easy. Dak.
Oh, never call a game easy, Steve. That's when you get bit in the ass.
Nick, Stafford, Henry, Kamara, Jones. Did you know Kamara's had been dealing with a broken hand and rib fracture over the last couple of weeks? Superman, trying to be Superman. Aaron Jones, Corum, Ty Chandler, Hill, McConkey, Terry, BTJ.
Why do you think I said he was a must sell at the end of week 3?
What would you rather add to the squad, Debo or Chubb? In my personal opinion here, I think that if sitting at 5-2, you can, if you were to accumulate 1 or 2 more losses, it's not like a deal breaker to you. In my mind, I much rather prefer Debo. By owning Debo, you also are mitigating the risk that now Juju gives you that maybe, you might not have thought about that risk before when he was the only show in town, essentially. It also, McConkey's getting the volume right now that it's going to be probably nice for the future, but it gives you a little bit of wiggle room if something were to happen. And if you wanted to, you could move one of those other wide receivers to put you into a better situation at another position. But I think I'd much rather have Debo because I do think that Henry, Kamara, and Aaron Jones will be enough for you moving forward in the season.
That's absolutely correct answer. The right answer is Debo. Guys, we love you guys commenting to each other and giving each other's answers. That is phenomenal. Joel, pick one for the flex. Your Douglas dude, Pittman, or Etienne. Well, I'm not even sure if Etienne's playing, so I'm just not going to count him until medicals are out. This is a hard choice, Joel, and it's not hard because it's good choices. I'm sorry about this one, bro. But
it's okay.
I guess I got to go Douglas because Richardson can't hit Pittman. He's just incapable of doing it. And I don't think Etienne's playing. It's a very sad choice, Joel. You brought some sadness to my heart with this one.
Well, let's get off the sadness for a minute, Joe, and let's tell us why Demario Douglas is a good choice here, right?
He's not a good choice. The other two are bad.
I actually think that he could be a good choice this week because of the situation that they're probably going to be in most of the game. You look at what the Jets do well, and they've stopped wide receivers in the past, but they're also running, a almost exclusively, man at certain points in times, or at least a variation of that, like you were saying with Minnesota, a lot. And I think it could benefit a guy like Demario Douglas. I'm not saying that Demario Douglas is going to have a great weekend. I wouldn't slot him in over a lot of other guys. But when you look at these three guys specifically, Demario Douglas definitely has the best upwards potential and the best ceiling out of all of them. Whether he hits that ceiling or not, it's a question, but he does have the best ceiling out of all three of these.
Oh, he absolutely has the best ceiling out of them. And that's why I'd go with him. The Jets, man, I really think the Jets are about to quit. I mean, I get that their front office went all in, but I think that team on the field got some issues. All right, Jackson. Now here is a Puka decision. To me, it's this one's easy. Garrett Wilson, Reed, or Puka. Bob, where are you going?
Well, with Reed's ankle still bothering him, and with Puka, like I said, coming back, I'm on Garrett Wilson actually out of these three.
Oh my God, I can't believe you said that.
I know, right?
Mine's Reed. Reed has been practicing and playing through it. I understand that it's there. Everyone's got pain, nicks, and bruises here at this point. To give the official answer on Reed, Jalen Reed was a limited participant in yesterday's practice. That's for the Wednesday practice. So, yeah, I'm 100% going to be sticky on Jalen Reed. This isn't a new injury to him. And the Puka Thursday fear is if they're both on Sunday, I might go Puka, but I'm going to go Reed.
Yeah, and my main thing about Garrett Wilson this week, and I think this is coming from a position where I do think that the Jets they're passing the ball a lot, and that's very evident and very clear. Breece Hall is continuing to be involved in the running game, and you just love to see it if you're a Breece Hall owner. When it comes to Reed versus Garrett Wilson this week, I think that both of them are going to be put in situations where they are going to be dealing with some game script that doesn't favor them at certain points in time. And so, without going further into that, Jackson, with the Packers facing the Jags and the Jets facing the Patriots, there's a very realistic chance that both of those games will be over soon. But I do believe that the Jets don't, while we think their defense is pretty good, I think I'd more like the Packers in the second half than the Jets. And I think that the Patriots might pull something out of their ass and they're going to have to do something later towards this game. I think that both, like you said, Joe, both are reasonable. I think Reed's a reasonable play, but my concern is his health. And I think that his health is really limiting him on the field. And for that reason, he's there more as a decoy for over the past 2 weeks than what his true value is to that team. And yeah,
I get that, but in terms of a decoy, I want a quarterback who's out there going to be able to make the plays, which I believe Love is better than Rodgers at this point.
Oh, I'm there with you. I do agree with that. Jonathan, bench one between Mason, Walker, Achane, Hunt, full PPR. I think your decision is probably going to be, Kenny Walker's dealing with an illness leading into the weekend, so he's not practicing right now. Not quite sure. We'll have to keep our eye on that. As it goes to the other players here, I think that it would be reasonable to think that Hunt would be a great play this week because they face the Raiders. And again, this is another game that I know it's a divisional matchup, but with the Chiefs playing the way they play, Hunt could definitely close this game out.
And I think both running backs could go crazy in that game, quite frankly.
And so in my mind, and even understanding that the Cowboys have a really bad defense, this is a nice place to be at with these players. I think that ultimately that I'm probably, if Walker's not going to play, I'm benching Walker. But if Walker is going to play, I'm probably benching Mason.
Yeah, I guess that's the direction you go. It's hard. I mean, Arizona's defense is so bad, so you basically had to fire up everyone from Miami. You're definitely playing Hunt, so yeah. I mean, I guess that's the decision you have to make. I think I might be benching Walker regardless, though. I think Walker just might be my hard answer.
I mean, I could see that. I could see you wanting to do that.
I mean, if he's sick now, I understand that it's 3 days till kickoff, but the thing is that Charbonnet's a quality option. Quality option.
He's definitely a quality option. It just depends on, like I said, though, with Ken Walker, and for anybody watching, right? Ken Walker's one of those players that because Seattle has been passing the ball so much, he has to do a lot with limited opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at Ken Walker, you're not getting like the full explosiveness that can be had if you're not feeding him the rock. So I think, like I said with Joe here, that if Walker's hurt or if Walker's injured or anything like that, I'm benching Walker leading up into that week. But I think I'm more so leaning on Mason because Mason most recently has been good, but again, fairly pedestrian in terms of what these other guys' ceilings have shown us in the past.
That's just because he hasn't had touchdowns. I think there's a chance with the Ayuk injury that he actually gets leaned more into the touchdown role, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair.
All right, so trade Mahomes and Hall for Kareem Williams, Jalen Daniels, Pollard, and Neighbor. It's a redraft superflex. His number one receiver right now is J-Jeff. His other quarterbacks are Richardson and Seamus Jameis. He's 2-5. So what we would need to know from here is who are the other guys you're cutting. I'm going to have to unfortunately make an assumption on this that because you're 2-5, they're bad. So if you're picking up, one other guy you're cutting. If you're picking up Pollard and Daniels and Neighbors, that's a significant downgrade from the pure strength of your team is, which is your running back room. So unless you have like Monty, who's going to step in as your running back too, I don't think I want to do this. You need to have the two strong running backs to carry you. As good as Neighbors is, I
feel like Para.
I want the two running backs.
So we see everybody in the chat. We're gonna answer this question, and it's probably gonna help out a decent amount of people who have Breece, Kyren, Mahomes, and all that. I flat out don't trust Patrick Mahomes. Carlo, you echo my sentiment almost completely understandably. Para's in a super flex league, so all quarterbacks become, the top 24 quarterbacks are obviously rosterable. Even with D-Hop there, I do not think, statistically speaking, that Mahomes is going to have incredible 20-plus point games continuing over the course of the season moving forward. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes down to it, the question is, would I rather have Mahomes? Would I rather have Breece or Kyren? I think this question for me is this. So the trade is, do I trade Mahomes and Breece or Mahomes and Kyren to move into Daniels, Pollard, and Neighbors?
And what I'm saying is I don't want to get rid of either of them because I don't think that getting an injured Daniels and an already injured Neighbors is worth it.
I feel what you're saying. I understand completely what you're saying. But I do think better games are ahead for you if you were to keep Mahomes, Breece, and Kyren without knowing the rest of your team. Well, it'd be helpful to know a couple of your wide receivers, Para.
He's got JJ.
But that's why I said a couple other wide receivers. But I think right now, if I wanted to make this deal to move out of Patrick Mahomes and into Jaden Daniels, that if I were to move one of those two players, I'd move Kyren because I like Breece's schedule later in the season. However, like Joe said, I would be more leaning towards keeping Breece and Kyren, playing Mahomes and Winston and Jefferson, and then laying the chips down as it lies, because your movement so much it's more of Pollard is that back end piece for you. So Mahomes and Kyren for Daniels, Pollard, and Neighbors feels fair, especially in a super flex league. That feels fair. And I could reason that if you wanted to make this trade, those would be the two players that I would deal for those three. But like Joe says, there is reason to believe that it's worth keeping both of the running backs and Mahomes, even if Mahomes doesn't offer you the upside of Jaden Daniels. So everybody in the chat, we see all the questions. We see all the questions.
CC, we love that you gave us a DD there, but we're going to hit up the quick hits probably for the next 6 minutes, and then we'll jump into your DD. Absolutely. Pick 2, Brian Thomas, Brian Robinson, and Mooney. So basically, who you benching, Bob?
Who am I benching? I'm benching Darnell Mooney. I understand that Darnell Mooney performed really well against Tampa a couple weeks ago, but I don't think that I could bench Brian Thomas even with Daniels being out. I mean, it's a tremendous opportunity for him to have a 100-yard game without Daniels rushing the ball. Mariota does rush the ball, but and Brian Thomas Jr. I think is going to be, the game script is going to favor him. So I would more so lean on Brian Thomas and Brian Robinson.
Yeah, the other thing you have that's going against Mooney is there's a pretty good chance that Atlanta gets up early and just runs it into submission.
Now that they know how to do that, yeah.
Thoughts on a team of what to work on. Love, Neighbors, Metcalf, Olave, Brian Thomas Jr., Deontay, McBride, Pitts, Hall, A-Chain, Brooks, Pollard. Well, I mean, dude, you got yourself a strong team right there. I appreciate you letting me know that you made some changes to it smells. But where I look at this here and go, what do we want to upgrade next? Really starts with what do I want to get rid of? And that's going to be certainly upgrade over A-Chain and Pollard, but with Tua back, I want to see how this A-Chain experience goes because it could be what we thought it was going to be all year. But to me, the big one I want to change off the bat is going to be Olave. I want to upgrade there because, again, you still have a lot of fat on this roster. So I would do an Olave and Deontay combo and upgrade that receiver or do some form of upgrading Pollard on the back end using Olave to do it. I mean, the long story short, you have an extra receiver, so it's probably better to do an Olave Pollard combo. That's what
I think Smells that Olave doesn't have a lot of value right now. So, it is what it is with him, but
here's the name value.
Yeah. If you're going to move any of your wide receivers, the one I would definitely move would be Olave. Cause I've heard, speculation says that Deontay Johnson might move. And I'm willing to wait it out on him to see what happens. Hall and Achane, I think, are going to be an incredible asset moving forward, and Brooks could be as well, especially if they start moving on from other assets. So Pollard is definitely a piece that's movable. Metcalf, when he comes back, should be another elite option. I would be okay, though, if I could move Pollard and Metcalf and move myself into something to elevate that. But also, because I think Metcalf still has a good amount of value. But realistically speaking, for you, it would be reasonable. Although I don't want to move off of BTJ, the 3 players from your team that I would probably move off of would be BTJ, Olave, and Pollard, with Pitts being the 4th one, knowing that you have McBride there. I really like this team, and I don't think that a lot of moves have to happen here. But that is where I would go. Steven, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we see all the questions down here. We're going to roll through a couple more quick hits before we get down into our deep dives. Steve, we got you on that deep dive. Absolutely. Alejandro. But Smells, I like the team. I think you're set up for success. And for anybody who owns Jordan Love right now too, the schedule's about to get a little bit harder for him, but he has the talent to supersede some of that. So I'm not worried about him, but keep that in mind moving forward as well. I traded Kupp and Pollard for Hill last week, and now we face off against each other this week. Alejandro, this is the type of stuff that is going to happen, right? People are worried about making trades for people that they're going to be facing soon. I know I tend to have FOMO about that myself, but I like this trade. This is a trade that could potentially be an elite level trade for you moving forward. Both Kupp and Hill have 30+ point upside in the right situation. Nino, I am so glad that you're back. Nino, start Jonathan Taylor over Devonta Smith or Brian Thomas Jr. Joe, where do you fall on that one?
So I love Jonathan Taylor. I mean, let's just start that up front. I'm a running back guy at my core. the Indianapolis Colts are slowly recognizing, as stupid as they are, that they never should have drafted Richardson because he can't complete a pass. When push comes to shove, Jonathan Taylor is the only person who can truly give them consistent points. And I want to be on a team's, quite frankly, only weapon. So that's what I want to do. Given there, that being said, my order would be Taylor, Thomas, Smith.
Taylor, Thomas, Smith. Yeah,
Sounds like a law firm, doesn't it? Maybe a country song.
Yeah, it sounds like a law firm. I think I'm on the same bus on that, Nino. If I had the opportunity and Jonathan Taylor's playing, I'm playing Jonathan Taylor. Looking at that game, Houston's probably not going to be blowing them out of the water. They're probably going to be doing the same thing, running Joe Mixon 26, 25, 24 times a game, which is going to run the clock out a little bit more. But if Colts can do the same thing with Taylor, both those running backs could easily surpass 100 yards. Yeah, I'd go in that order. Taylor, Thomas, Smith.
So, Bob, we're having just in general communication throughout here. There seems to be, just looking at some of the comments ahead, a very big divide about the Puka side. I am on team let's play him. I mean, there's a couple of guys I'm not starting him over, but I am excited for Puka tonight. He might just be our general theme of the evening.
How I feel, how I would operate here in this order, Nino, I'd be Bo Nix, Gino, Patty.
Yeah, I'm going to go Bo Nix. It is really weird diving into the game script when Denver does have a lead, how much they favor in Peyton's history as well. The quarterback's the one who gives it to them. They don't oftentimes have this much favor, being more than 5.5 points. But when they do, the quarterback's the one that drives the bus. Bo Nix is like a really good DFS play this week. And that's a sentence I wasn't sure I was ever going to say this year.
Well, what I want to be absolutely unequivocally clear about as well is that while this is not the sexy play, okay? While this is not the sexy play, the bonus that we have here, and this is why I wanted to talk a little bit about Javonte Williams. A lot of creators out there right now are smashing Javonte Williams, and it's fair that if you have Javonte, it's a reasonable decision because Carolina's run defense is so bad that it's a reasonable decision to play Javonte Williams. However, what I want to stress to you is that Javonte Williams has about 300 yards rushing for the Denver Broncos. And guess who number 2 is in rushing? It's
the boner.
So this ball is going to be in Bo Nix's hand almost the entire game. And I think it's reasonable to assume that even if he doesn't do well throwing it, I see that he could probably get 220, probably get 2 touchdowns, and probably get 50 to 70 yards rushing and maybe a rushing touchdown. There's a lot of upside this week with Bo Nix.
So, guys, on that note here, I've given some illustrations in the past to get the point across here. Javonte Williams, putting him back into your lineup is going to be the equivalent of eating back your own throw up. Like, it came in your mouth. You had a chance to get it out of your life. Let it out.
Oh, my God.
That is what Javonte Williams is. Get him out of your world.
I will say this,
today.
Though. I will say this. And just on Javonte Williams, because I know a lot of people had questions about Javonte yesterday.
I know.
When we look at Javonte Williams, this matchup is the matchup that fantasy players want to see. A very bad defense with a very
let someone else do it.
With a very mid running game. If you could sell Javonte Williams right now, you are probably going to get the highest value that you can outside of if he performs well in the coming week ahead. But again, when you look at Denver as a team, and I bring this up because we were talking Bo Nix, and this is important to the discussion about Bo Nix playing Carolina and whatnot as well. When you have a rushing quarterback, and that's why these 3 players, that's why in DFS lineups, I'm probably rolling out Bo Nix a lot. I think on FanDuel, he's like 6,500, right? Bo Nix has 45 or 46 less rushing yards than Javonte Williams this year. And that's after a big game, right? And where Javonte Williams' other value is in the pass game. But that's not what Carolina does bad. Carolina actually does okay against receiving backs. Okay. They are putrid against
get rid of Javonte Williams
that run. So my fear is that when everybody's pushing out Javonte Williams is, don't forget, there's Audric Estime, there's Jaleel McLaughlin, there's Bo Nix, and it is not unusual. And this is the last thing I want to say about this. It's not unusual for a team. Atlanta did it against Carolina, where they rolled out Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. So when we were stressing, Bijan had a great game, Tyler Algier had a great game too. So it's very plausible that all the running backs here have a good game, but I think people are forgetting about Bo Nix's role in this offense.
Nino, I love you. You're right. Puka's going to eat. That's how I feel about it.
So everybody down here in the chat, we're going to roll through a couple of these quick hits. Steven, we're going to help you in a minute as well. Jonathan, Craig, we see everybody. Cap, great to have you back. Jesse as well. So let's roll through a couple more of these quick hits before we get to some of the deep dives there. I traded Jaden Reed and Jordan Mason for Brian Thomas Jr. and Brian Robinson. I'm 4-3 with a good chance to win this week. Did I win that trade? So, Adam, I think you did fine. I think where I look at this trade, and Joe will probably want the Jaden Reed, Jordan Mason side, but I'm going to say why this trade, why we can't say if we want it yet. Both of those wide receivers profile differently.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Thomas Jr. is a wideout, doesn't play much in the slot. Jaden Reed plays almost exclusively in the slot. Okay, so his opportunities are going to look different against different defenses. The Brian Robinson, Jordan Mason, I really don't have a problem with that because I think logistically speaking, both of those running backs have very good opportunities and they do what they can with the opportunities that they're given. So I think both of those running backs it's a little bit column A, column B. You're buying the production of Brian Thomas Jr. and the guy who sold, and when you traded away Jaden Reed, you were selling the dip on Jaden Reed. And I think this trade is fair, but what I would look towards to see is coming down the horizon here for Brian Thomas, at least, how are the matchups going to look for him? And in terms of Jaden Reed, how are those matchups going to look? I think by the end of the year, we're going to be probably saying that this trade is fairly even, with Jaden Reed getting a lot of spike weeks and Brian Thomas getting a lot of spike weeks as well. I think this is a fair trade.
I'm not saying it's not fair. I would rather have Mason with the more question marks that are out there about CMC. Mason should outperform Robinson every week. Then Robinson just going to make up the ground once CMC comes back. So, and I think Reed will just flat out be better than Thomas. And then to answer your second follow-up question, should you start Puka over Jennings?
I mean, they're both hurt. I mean,
yeah.
So I think, Adam, in this respect, that I'm on Team Jennings because Jennings has a couple more days to show me something. But I would only be on Team Jennings if I have a backup plan. If I didn't
that's it. If it's down, I think I'm on Jennings regardless, though. Because if Debo's sick and he's not part of the game plan, Jennings is going to get required to be incorporated more into it. Although the real winner in this scenario is Kittle.
Oh, yeah. If Kittle plays, absolutely 100%. Steven, we're so thankful that you guys are showing the love, showing the likes, following, and we appreciate the opportunity to get to know everybody.
And let's do CC's deep dive right here. Let's do CC's deep dive because we've been a while since we've done a deep dive.
All right, we'll get CC's
following from yesterday, rating the team. Hurts, Hunt, Kareem, Jidget, Cooper, Otten, Monty. Love Monty. Why do you guys keep telling me about kickers? I mean, come on.
Kickers are important, bro.
So anyway, man, CC, overall, I really like your team. I really like the fact that you have two quality tight ends. I do think Laporta's going to come back. I love Otten this week, though, given the situation he's now found himself in.
Yeah, I think this week I'm on Otten, man. I've looked into the numbers. I've looked into the numbers a little bit more, Joe. And while I understand the game script for Laporta and that there's going to be more design targets for Laporta this week, I just I think that Otton is a better play this week when it comes to these two tight ends. I get what you're.
And that's fair. That's fair enough. The thing that I would change about your team, CC, is you have, while they're good on your bench, you have a lot of bench. And you don't need to have that much quality down there. So I would look into long run only wanting to keep one of the receivers out of Flowers, Jennings, and Olave on my bench and using the other two to upgrade other starters. So if we're upgrading Monty, for instance, at your flex, or I love having those three there too. Same argument, Monty being just your bench version of those receivers. That's why this is probably the same advice I gave you yesterday, because I feel like it's the same words coming on my face. But that's what I would do is I would do Olave and Jennings, or maybe Olave and Flowers, whichever one's higher at the end of this week, and go out and upgrade one of your starting spots.
Well, what's going to need to happen, though, before you do that, CC, is you're going to have to take Puka off that IR spot. And
yes, you got to cut one of them.
By taking Puka off that IR spot, you are going to have to drop one of these players. And
so really, Carson, you got to do a 2-for-1 trade now and cut the Vikings defense, or cut Butker.
Yeah. So that's
you got to cut Butker, and then do your 2-for-1, and then re-pick up a kicker.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So CC, you're talking to a guy that owned Butker in 2 leagues. He's a kicker worth owning, but to that degree, there's other kickers worth owning. I just went out there. Will Lutz was on there. I picked up Will Lutz. Cameron Dicker is up there. It's worth picking up them. I mean, playing the roulette wheel of kickers is worth it. So if you need to activate Puka tonight, I think it's fair to drop Butker to activate Puka. Then when it comes down to who do I drop to pick up another kicker, the question for me comes in that where is the most depth that I have, right? So if I can't get a 2-for-1 trade done this week, CC, where I fall at is that I'm taking one of those wide receivers and dropping them. Now, I think it's better to trade them. And Joe is absolutely right. It is better to trade one of those players in a 2-for-1 deal. Let's say you take Dowdle, you take whichever running back you don't trust. So Dowdle or Chubb, one of those two, you pair them up with one of those wide receivers, whichever wide receiver you don't have faith in producing moving forward. My money, I don't have as much faith in the Saints as a team right now. So I would be moving Olave and Dowdle, but that's not worth much. You're going to get into a very low-end player for that, and it's not worth your time. So you're probably going to have to move Flowers and Chubb, or Flowers and Dowdle, and you can really get yourself into something nice with those two players. Not something over the top, but you can get a back-end piece. Like for me,
do a 3-for-2 and include Hunt.
You could totally do that as well. You could potentially move on from Hunt, do Hunt and Flowers. You might be able to move yourself up into the Jacobs market if that's a market that you want to move into. You could probably move yourself into the Cook market if that's a market that you want to move into as well. So there's a lot.
Here's another thing that I would do, CC. Here's another angle. You can go about this here. You probably can get this done with Flowers. You could probably do Monty and Flowers and get Gibbs. And that would be a respectable conversation. Because remember, whoever you get, you got to have a starting spot to put them in to make it worthwhile. So upgrading one of your starters is the option there. You can't trade Cup yet because you need to see him produce.
Yeah, and I mean, it is fair. It is fair, CC, that if this is something you want to pursue, right? I love your team. I think you're set, and then Joe's absolutely right. The bench is pretty deep, but it doesn't need to be that deep right now. That if you,
I think Hunt's the one you should upgrade because of the Pacheco stuff looming.
You could totally do Monty and Flowers, and that will get you into a Gibbs probably pretty easily. For my bet, I'd be trying to move into Saquon Barkley. I know the Saquon Barkley owners don't want to move Saquon Barkley, but if you give them an offer that they can't refuse, like if you start saying, I'll give you
Hunt and Flowers is a starting point for that conversation.
I'll give you something you can't refuse. and they won't be able to do it. So I mean, like this is going to be tricky. I mean, it's
you
going
could
to be
also do. Well, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff, but what you could do is you could do. We talked about this before. You can't have both ramps, but you want to sit on Cup until the reality happens. But for today, I would recommend Hunt and then Flowers, maybe Hunt, Flowers, and Jennings, and go for that Saquon. I think that's a fine spot because you're not going to get King Henry.
The Saquon or the Bijan owner will probably enjoy having some of that depth. But again, it all depends upon what has been happening with rosters in your league. For anybody just watching, just tuning in, we appreciate Steven. If you like what we're sharing with you, if you like the community we're building, please click like and subscribe. We're going to get to a bunch of more quick hits here. Bones, I'm curious.
Yeah, it's deep dive times. The two next deep dives that are up after this quick hitter is going to be Steve, and then what was that? The Ice Pack, Arrow Chill. I called you Ice Pack, dude. Sorry about that. You got all the cold stuff going on.
Steven,
you're the second deep dive on the queue right now.
So, Bones, I work in the basement of a church. I work at a school. We are in the basement of a Presbyterian church. These are original stained glass windows to the church. So, yes.
Dude, all of Pittsburgh is a stained glass window. Everyone has one.
Pittsburgh has a lot of churches, man. We live in Pittsburgh. It has a lot of churches, both Catholic, Presbyterian, all that stuff. All right.
You name it, we got it.
So let's get to Numa. Numa. When I look at it, trading away Dobbins and Olave, giving up too much for Bijan, no. If I can go out there and get Bijan today, I'm doing it. And if I can move just Dobbins and Olave to get Bijan, I'd do that. I don't actually realistically think that these two players are enough to get you Bijan right now. But if that is what they're asking for, I would do that in a heartbeat. I'd like Dobbins moving forward, but Bijan I like better. Absolutely. Jackson.
Yep.
I got to drop someone to move Puka off IR. Benches Braylon Allen, Bigsby, D-Hop, Ladd, McMillan, Garrett Wilson. Who do I even drop? My initial lean here is to drop Braylon Allen. That's my initial lean. I know it's
that's what you have to do.
But it would make sense. But it would also make sense to drop one of those wide receivers because you can't start all those wide receivers as well. So
Jackson, what I would do is if you can get by doing, although you won't let you do the trade, what you have to do is you have to get a 2-for-1 done to upgrade your team for all the same reasons we just went through CC's team about. This is that time of the year, guys. The thing with injuries in general is this. September has more than any other month. So you need to have the depth through September. But after you get past that, injuries, even though they might be horrific, tend to normalize at a lower rate. There's a lot of math behind why, but just accept it that that's what the reality is. So you don't need to have as deep of benches anymore. And playoff championships are only won by your starters. Your bench is irrelevant. So Jackson, move Wilson, pair him up with someone else, maybe Ladd, maybe McMillan, whoever's got bigger upside. I'd keep Ladd personally. But I would do Wilson and McMillan, do a 2-for-1, upgrade your team. But more importantly, do Wilson and a starter to upgrade the starting position even harder.
Yeah, and Allen, and like Adam said here, Allen is my drop. He's not being used as much with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. We're going to get into a lot of these other quick hits. If you're just joining us today, or if this is your first time in, you can leave a comment or question. We answer all comments and questions in the chat. Right now, we're backed up a little bit on those quick hits, but we're coming through, and we're going to reach into the deep dives. A quick hit is if you just want a couple word response, maybe a little bit extra, and a deep dive, we take a little bit more time to kind of roll with you, and talk with the community about that question. Quick hit, roll Mahomes this week or pick up Russell Wilson. I've got Jane Daniels down. I think it's fair to say that Russell Wilson is a decent enough play this week.
Yeah, I'd roll the dice on Russ.
I would roll the dice on Russ, but I'd roll the dice on Bo Nix before I rolled the dice on Russell Wilson.
That's true, but Mahomes does hate the Raiders, but I'd still go with Russ.
So ETN, Steve, you're finally able to move on from one of the many running backs into starting wide receiver. Steve, I love this for you. I love this for you so
But that's
much.
part of the deep dive, though.
That's the way to do it.
You're cheating ahead there. That's why it's got a star, Bob.
ETN practicing fully today. That's good for ETN, but at the same point in time, he's working his way. It feels like he's working his way out of the hearts of that coaching staff more so. I'm not putting my full trust in ETN at all this week.
I really hope he's working his arms into Jerry World.
Dudes, Bones, it's Najee and JSN for me. It's Najee and JSN for me. Najee's in a good situation this week. I understand your want to put in Chase Brown, but again, Chase Brown, they might not be in this game further down the line. It could be a Zach Moss kind of blocking situation. I'm on Najee, and I know Joe's going to flame me so much for my MHJ hate, but it's not hate. It's
right. I mean, JSN's the pick this week.
He's getting targets thrown his way, but again, it's not. There's nothing valuable.
Dude, it doesn't take much to sell me on Kyler Murray sucks. I mean, let's be honest about that.
Nah,
one of our things scrolling around was what the hell is he binging? Because it ain't game film, and that's true. The part I'm more worried about is that Najee one. I get you have to do it, but I don't know.
If Puka plays, is Stafford a viable? So Puka is going to play. Stafford is definitely a viable option, and this speaks to what you were saying about trusting Mahomes. Stafford is a viable option this week, but just understand that, and I want to be clear about Minnesota's offense or defense as well. Minnesota does let up a enormous amount of passes. Last week, they only gave up 25 to Jared Goff, but realistically speaking, because teams are playing behind against Minnesota, that, there's some problems there. They want to run the ball with Kyron a lot. Minnesota has a decent enough run defense, one of the best in the league, actually. And so that game script might favor Stafford a little bit more. I'm okay starting Matt Stafford tonight. Is this a good trade for my Dynasty League, Alex B? Currently 2-5. Should I trade Derrick Henry for a 2025 first-round pick, Nick Chubb, and Troy Franklin? I understand the value of Derrick Henry in a Dynasty League, Alex, and we can deep dive this a little bit later, but I don't know. Where's that first-round pick at?
I'm doing that.
I'm okay with this. Especially that you're getting the first-round pick. We've got a lot of players coming out. Nick Chubb will be one more year removed from the injury, maybe even on a better team. 28 years old. When you get him back next year, 29. Henry is still doing Henry's thing. Plus, you get Troy Franklin on the backside. I don't know how much Troy Franklin's value.
Franklin's a throw-in. Maybe he connects, maybe he doesn't. But I would do it mostly for the pick. And Chubb also will give you a starter for next year. And so clearly, Alex, we're taking this the assumption you're throwing in the towel this year. That's part of Dynasty. That's part of life sometimes. But I like getting the return for Henry. I might, just because I always poke the bear a little bit, try to get a second round pick 2 years from now as well.
Yeah, I would try for that. Alex. And also, if we're running through the quick hits, if you don't hear us answering your question, feel free to go back in and listen and watch. We answer every single question that comes our way. Matchup wise, do you think Christian Gonzalez will be lined up more across from Adams than Wilson this week? Possible smash Wilson play.
I don't think he's going to be switching sides of the field. I think they're just going to have him stationary where he's at. And I think more importantly, it's not going to matter because Rodgers is only going to throw the ball at the middle when he feels fear, and that's where Gonzalez is going to sit. So when it's all said and done, I don't like smashing the Jets this week because I think Rodgers is going to get smashed.
It's fair. That assessment, Joe, is fair when it comes to pressures and things like that. I do agree with you that that's a possibility that happens. It's a likely possibility that it happens. But I think that when it comes to a guy like Garrett Wilson and when it comes to this game specifically, I think Garrett Wilson is a great play. I know, Joe, you don't like him. I know that there's lots of reasons why you don't like him, but there is going to be a pathway to success here for the pass catchers. My only fear, and it's the fear all the time, and it's the reason why I said a couple weeks ago to do this, is Allen Lazard. For some reason, Allen Lazard does just enough that Aaron Rodgers loves him just enough that he's relevant every single week.
And Wilson is clearly third in the Rodgers BFF list.
I'm still on Wilson. I'm okay with Wilson, and I'm okay with Wilson for, many different reasons, but he's got good separation. He's able to win in that area, and I think that benefits with the coverages that New England has. So I'm on Garrett Wilson. Start one: Puka, Olave, or Deontay. It's Puka. Out of your choices, Bryce. It's Puka. Olave is not a reliable starter right now with the quarterback situation that they have. And heck, maybe Olave goes off. Maybe he does.
The rattling gun.
Reasonably speaking, with Rattler and with Hainer, it's not a safe assumption that we can make that Olave will do well. They say they want to throw the ball to Olave more. That's fair. As it goes to Andy Dalton here, Deontay Johnson.
He's not playing.
Deontay Johnson. What?
Young's playing.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So when it comes to Deontay Johnson, this now looks a little bit different. And Deontay Johnson is also walking into this game with an injury. So I think Puka gives you the best chance to have like a nice game. And Deontay Johnson would be second on my list there. If I
and also, Bryce, remember, it's a Thursday night play. This is true for everyone with Puka. You have to put him in your receiver slot. Always put your Thursday night guys in the position slot. It's the part of the policy of the game.
In this other league, Bryce, I'm starting JSN. In this other league, I'm starting JSN.
Yeah, JSN is ahead of Puka. That's right.
Cash. When it comes to Tyreek, I was reading the chat down here between you and Donnie and a couple of people here. It really does.
According to the official NFL report, he's not listed as questionable, and he didn't even miss practice. Taysom Hill, on the other hand, is, but not Tyreek.
Yeah, I just love it. And Para, to your question from earlier, where you mentioned your situation here with the trade, Joe, I'm going to scroll back up to go find that because I want to get back and talk about that. Just a follow up here. Having your other wide receivers.
His other receiver was J. Jeff.
Your other receiver was J. Jeff, but down here, we just saw, Para, that you have Waddle, Dell, and Deontay. I think I am okay with doing that trade if it means that I can move on from Dell, right? Dell would not be in my starting lineup. And I think that Neighbors with J. Jeff and one of those running backs is good enough. So if I were making that deal,
I'm just not sure that the delta between Kareem and Pollard is smaller than Neighbors to Dell.
Yeah, and here's the thing about Kareem.
That's why I'm a no on it.
Here's the thing about Kareem. Kareem, however you want to say his name. I know, Joe, we go back and forth on this. But when it comes to Kyren, what happens is that his stats are purely based on volume. He has no explosion, nothing, right? Mm-hmm. It is strictly based on volume. So my only question with Kyren, and this is my only question with Kyren, when both wide receivers come back, the opportunities to score will be better. That is almost unequivocally a fact, right? But also the volume might not be as much. So if he's already not doing enough explosively with the volume, but the opportunities might be better, there's reason to say both sides that maybe this is the time to move Kyren and to move into other assets like Neighbors and Jaden Daniels. That's all I'm saying about that.
And again, I wouldn't do it because I'm concerned about Neighbors' long-term health.
Steven, so starters go. We have Allen, Gibbs, Cook, MHJ, Nakua, Ingram, Flex Amari. Love that. Defense, Chargers. Chargers are slept on, man. They have a really good matchups over the next couple of weeks. Butker, I think, is worth dropping. Dell, Worthy, Hopkins, Chubb, Hunter Henry. I like Hunter Henry a lot. Keon Coleman, Mahomes. So, Steven, when it comes to it, I like where your team's at here. I do like where your team's at, and I think it's worth considering moving on from Mahomes. If you can get anybody to move into Mahomes, it's worth a try. I also think that Butker's worth dropping. I'm not going to act like if you don't want to drop him, that's cool, that's fine. But also there are other kickers out there that have a really good ceiling. Lutz is one of them. We have Dicker. That again, teams that kick field goals a lot. We want to buy into that. When it comes to what your back end pieces are here, Steven, your front end pieces look really nice, but that MHJ sitting there at wide receiver 1. I know Joe's okay with it, but I think
that's actually the spot I'm going to go to upgrade. When you're talking about what to upgrade with this team, it's your receiving room. I mean, there's just no way around it. So you have a lot of volume there. Again, you're going to basically be having to play is Coleman going to go off game or not? Hopkins might save you, but what I would do right now is I would try to package Harrison Jr. And Dell. They have name recognition, and see if you can upgrade. I mean, that's a flat out spot. I think we're well past the window when you could get an AJ Brown, but I wouldn't mind trying to make that conversation and call to see if you could.
Absolutely.
That's where I would start with there, Steven, as far as looking for it as we go for it on 4th.
So as we go through, we're gonna run through these quick hits. We're at 428 on the quick hits. It's 5:00 right now, so we're a little bit behind. Jesse, it's good to see you again. Quick hit here, Craig, Dave Montgomery, or Achane as my running back. I think both of them are definitely worth starting this week. The Titans in most recent weeks have given up a lot on the ground. So I think that David Montgomery, if healthy, is a great play this week.
Monty's the one I would pick, given health being equal.
The Cardinals also give up a decent amount on the ground and through the air. So both are great.
That's going to be a pass fest. That's going to be, I'm the smartest person in the world. Tyreek Hill got 300 yards. I'm telling you, that's what that game is going to be.
If I could only start one, I'd start David Montgomery. Rate this trade, Santiago. Adams, Najee, and McBride for Higgins, Kittle, and Rashad White. All things considering, with the health of the wide receivers in Tampa Bay, if you would ask me this a week ago, I probably wouldn't have been in on it. I don't really like either of the wide receivers in this deal. I'm okay moving Najee and McBride into Kittle and White. I think that Najee does have good second half of the season kind of mentality about him. And Kittle, it could be absolutely electric with Debo or Ayuk and whatnot down. But if I'm the Adams, Najee, McBride side, it's not. I don't have to do this deal. I don't have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I love getting Kittle. How could you not? But I don't like the other two pieces there. I think I'd rather have the Najee side when it's all said and done. So that's how I would rate it. I'd rate it as I'd rather have the Najee side.
That's this. Sorry, that was that. I don't know why that was doing that. Naylor or Raymond this week?
At least it's not the fruit flies attacking you again.
Naylor or Raymond this week? I think if we're going for like a moonshot on this one, with Addison back, with the health of Hawks still kind of up in the air, and J. Jeff sitting there and waiting, I think I'm on Khalif Raymond. Naylor could have a good game. Naylor could definitely have a good game.
What are the two emojis that you can't get through? I'm now interested in that.
Who would I flex between Devonta Smith and Dobbs and Otten?
I'm going Dobbs, no question asked.
Yeah. I mean, Devonta Smith has a great matchup. I mean,
I get that.
Don't get me wrong on that. I think if this is Devonta Smith, Jesse, and you can clarify, I think I'm rolling out I think I'm rolling out Dobbs. I think I'm rolling into Dobbs, and my second would be Smith. Cade Otton should start in your tight end position, but we'll see.
He shouldn't be a flex.
Is it worth dropping the Jets defense? Yes, it's worth dropping the Jets defense.
We have the Jets defense rated as the best defense this week, Bob.
It's worth dropping the Jets defense. I understand what you're saying. They're playing against Drake May. It's worth dropping them. He asked, is it worth it? Is Jets defense dropped?
Yeah, next week.
They are.
This week, they're the best defense. In streaming defenses, they are the best defense.
I actually think the Chargers are a better choice, dude. I think the Chargers are a better choice this week.
And I'd rather have the Jets. So cash money, that's where we're at for this week. Rest of the season, it probably is the Chargers, though.
Yeah, I'd rather have the Chargers. I think this is a walkie-talkie, and I think I have to charge this. Is that sound coming from this walkie-talkie?
So you just traded Javonte, Tua, and McBride for Puka, Ingram, and Dell. I love it. I love the Puka side of that trade. Dell and the Javonte are both irrelevant. I think this is the maximum return to get on to Steve. Quite frankly, you nailed this, and this is the peak of trading off of perception, and I love it. I think
you moved into good stuff.
I love it.
You moved into some really good stuff. I think McBride is great, but you moved into some really good stuff. If Etienne plays, do I start Bigsby or Algier or Moss or Tracy? I think with Etienne possibly coming back and already thinking about possible negative game script with Bigsby, I think I'd move off of Bigsby in your scenario, and I think that I would move into Tyrone Tracy. I think I would.
See, I'm going Moss regardless.
Yeah, and that's fair. Moss will be on the field a lot if the Bengals end up going down. Steven, you had Allen Mahomes and you picked up 2 off waivers and moved him and Javonte for those guys. Dude, that's fire. That's absolutely fire. 100% agree with you. Sean,
so
we
good.
see everybody in
so
the chat
good.
below. We see everybody in the chat below. We're going to clear through a lot of quick hits and we're going to get to some deep dives in a moment. Who do I start at full flex PPR here? Javonte, Brian Thomas, Cooper, Cook. So a couple ways to view this. There are 3 players on this list or there's 1 player on this list, like we said earlier, that people are going to tell you to start, and it's Javonte Williams. I am not going to tell you to start Javonte Williams. There's reasons to believe that he will do well, but I'm not starting Javonte Williams. The 2 guys that I'm between here in your list are Brian Thomas Jr. and Amari Cooper. In your case, I think it would be reasonable, Sean, to start either. And I think that both will put up a good stat line for you, probably similar-ish stats. I'm looking at both these guys to have, and Joe, you can verify in our stats there, but I'm looking at both these guys to have between, 13 and 15 points, if not higher on those 2 guys.
We have Cooper incredibly high this week.
I know
we have Cooper as the number 2 receiver.
Yeah, I'm on Amari.
So Cooper's gone a ball this week, man.
Yeah. Need a bit. Darnold and Vikings D game tonight. Need a big game. I think you're going to get a decent game from Darnold. I think you're going to get a decent game from Darnold. I'm not sure. I think the Vikings will have a pretty good game, but the Vikings are all about causing the turnover and getting the turnover return for a touchdown. That could happen today. That could definitely happen today.
This is the Rams Super Bowl tonight. I'm not sure I want to bet against the Rams. It's their Super Bowl.
Really scrolling through them. Quick hit here for Carlos. 10-team PPR dynasty contending. Love it. Which running back should I target for a 2025 second rounder? Connor, Chubb, or Mason? And Puka or Addison tonight? Joe, where is your
definitely Puka over Addison? That one's the easy part of this equation. I think my answer, if you're in a dynasty, is Mason. He's the youngest of the 3, not hurt, and has shown quality value that he might even get moved in real life, although I doubt it. And as they're talking about moving CMC into more of a slot role, it opens up the power for Mason. So long-term dynasty, for both short-term and that, I'm going Mason for the trade. I think it's a hell of value that you're getting him for. It's probably the fair trade. And Puka would be the one I start tonight over Addison.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think it's possible that Jordan Addison could do well tonight. Carlos, I'm on Addison tonight. I know that Joe is on Puka, but I'm on Addison tonight. This has really been some voodoo. We were talking with Mr. Wumbo about it, and we think that Jameson Williams went into the NFL secret drug cabinet and just started doing them all. Hearsay, conjecture, but just a joke. Derek, trade Monty for CMC and PPR. I'm 4-3. My other running backs are Achane, Gibbs, and Charbonnet. I like Monty, and I think that you could probably get more right now. Because of the uncertainty for CMC, I think that you could get CMC and something else for a healthy Monty.
You could probably do it for just Charbs, though.
I don't know if you could do that because Ken Walker is playing. So, I mean, I don't know, Derek. Derek, we can deep dive that a little bit later.
You should get more than CMC for Monty.
I think
that's the fact of life.
Just trade Tucker Kraft and Chuba Hubbard for Jane Reed. Love that. Absolutely love that for you, Nick. Picked up Tua and Olave on waivers and traded MHJ for Waddle. Dude,
you're like Bob's best friend.
Go. Let's freaking go. MHJ. Again, I am not hating MHJ as a player. I'm hating
you're hating Kyler Murray, and I'm all for it.
Organization. And this is from a guy who owns Kyler Murray and wants to not play him at all. Anytime I have to start him. Adam, keep one for the rest of the season. Chase Brown, Bucky. The JT owner wants Pollard and either Brown or Bucky. I
would rather keep Bucky the rest of the year.
I think right now I'm okay trading off of Chase Brown. Okay trading off of Chase Brown. For anybody in the chat, we appreciate all the love. We appreciate the likes, follows. We appreciate the comments. We want to build a great community here. Definitely smash the like button if you are in here. Craig, cool beans. Love that. I just love the old windows. I mean, they don't open up well, but it's really nice when the sun comes in the mid-afternoon. I really like it. Markin, Darnold or Purdy? I think we're on Purdy this week.
I'm on Purdy. Road Thursday night games, they're not normally awesome.
Yeah. Our lean is Purdy. I mean, Thursday night games are weird. Let's just be clear about that. Thursday night games are weird. This is where Kirk Cousins went for 500 yards. Okay. So just take that for what it's worth. Landon, what's up? Should I trade King Henry and Barkley to get Jefferson and Breece Hall? My receivers would be Tyreek, CeeDee, and Flex Jefferson. My running backs would be Bijan, Breece, and Aaron Jones.
So you have Bijan, King Henry, and Barkley right now.
Yeah, remember, this is a small league. Remember, this one was a small league.
I don't want to move Henry. Just period. I would rather, and this might sound weird, I'd rather move Bijan than Henry.
I mean, that is weird to say that. That is weird to say that. I don't see I like the idea of going out and getting Breece Hall, and I do like the idea of going out and getting Justin Jefferson. I would do that. I think I would do that, but I do think you're giving up a decent amount.
Henry's going to lead the league in touches.
Those two guys. I know. I'm there with you. I'm there with you, Joe. I do agree that Bijan would be the piece that I would move instead. Probably Bijan and Barkley for Jefferson and Breece. But even so, I don't see that you necessarily need to do this trade at all. And if you're doing it to get into Jefferson or Breece, try to just get into one of them first, Landon, rather than both at the same time. Because I think your team is fine the way it sits. And you're building for the future. So
yeah, you probably do Barkley for Jeff. I mean, you probably could pull that.
Yeah. Or I think that's what I do. I hope ETN is out. You're welcome, Bones. Absolutely. Carlo, you're welcome. It feels weird, but we are at the precipice now that in a 12-team league, that if Mahomes can't get 18, 20 plus points a game on a consistent basis, he's not worth playing. Puka or Lockett, full PPR.
Just say it, Bob. You want Puka.
Yeah, I'd rather have Puka in this. I can find myself reasons to start Tyler Lockett this week, especially in the framework of that game. Yeah, I think I'd start Puka this week, but I'm really not expecting that much.
That's right.
Just to be clear, I'm not expecting that much from Puka, and I think that Tyler Lockett puts out the same potential as Puka. B5 here. So we're almost caught up on all the quick hits here. Quick hit, activating Puka. Good. Who do I drop? Madison, Downs. It's Downs. You drop Downs.
It's Downs. As soon as Downs was said, that's the answer.
B5. It's Downs without a question. With AR back, it doesn't make any sense to hold on to Downs. He was looking really good with Flacco, though. That's really disappointing. Tyreek might score 50 this week. There's a good chance that Tyreek could go off for 40 this week.
Yeah, Tyreek's going big.
Holy shit, Bones. No way. That is insane. Too many NFL players are getting shot right now. I did have Josh Reynolds on my team for a bye week one time, and he did pretty good. Wounded in shooting, got shot in the head. Holy shit. I did not, while leaving a strip club. Carlo, I love the Vikings kicker this week. I really
so he really got shot last night.
He got wounded after being shot in the arm and the head. This was 13 minutes ago.
So last night, though, you don't get shot coming out of a strip club at 3:00 in Denver time.
Maybe he was going to the buffet. He could have been going to the buffet. The strip club buffet is notorious. Notorious.
Everyone needs a little lunchtime snack, I guess.
Tennyson has great steak, they say. Remember, I have Garrett Wilson also, so I'm trying to get off Adams. Santiago, that tracks.
Get out of Wilson, keep Adams. That's what you got to do, Santiago. You're doing it backwards.
Also, another question here from B5. Start 2, Addison, Puka, Pollard, Tracy, Dobbs, Coleman. I think that I would be on Dobbs and Addison, and I think Joe is probably on Dobbs and Puka. I think that Dobbs and Puka is pretty solid.
It's definitely Dobbs. It's either Puka or Pollard, but probably Puka.
And I'm not really in on Pollard right now. The Lions do have a good defense against the rush this year. So
yeah, it's 11-point spread. That could get ugly.
Yeah, I'd roll Pollard out because he is the only kind of the option right now for them. But I would tend to lean Dobbs and Puka. But also the Puka start is scary. I'm not expecting a whole lot. If he does really well, I could see that happening. But I think it's more of a smoke screen than anything else. Lions defense plays the Titans. I think it's worth starting the Lions defense this week if you have to. If you have to start the Lions defense.
It's not a bad play at all.
It's not a bad play, but I'm on the Chargers ahead of the Lions this week. So I think that, and I'm on the Broncos ahead of the Lions this week. So, Chiefs could be a good streaming defense this week. They can cause turnovers. They did that against San Francisco too. I think there are a lot of good streaming defensive options this week. So if you're sitting there with the Jets, I think there are equally likely options to do good. I'm not saying the Jets will do bad. I think there's just better options. Jay. Okay, Jesse. Yeah, it was Devonta Smith. Trade Bigsby for Hopkins. If you need a wide receiver, it's reasonable to think that you could probably get a little bit more for Bigsby right now. I think you could get just a little bit more for Bigsby right now. But I think that if you want a wide receiver, again, we're buying into this receiver Hopkins doing well with Mahomes, which is reasonable to buy into, right?
Yeah.
But also, Hopkins is old. He's been dealing with injuries all season. Bigsby is younger, hasn't been the best all the time, dealing with an unsettled backfield situation. Maybe one of those running backs gets traded and all of a sudden, the situation changes. So I don't know if I'd move Bigsby into Hopkins right now. If you're okay, if you need a wide receiver, it's reasonable to think that that's okay. Nino, I hate giving up my boy Brandon Aubrey, but literally got offered Hunt and the Broncos D. That was the right move, right? Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Nino, if I'm trading a kicker for a starting running back, you can pick up Will Lutz right now, and he'll probably get you 12 points. You could pick up Cameron Dicker. He got 17 points last week. I mean, you look at it, if I can get also the Broncos defense, dude, shoot, Nino, you win that. I've never seen a kicker be traded for a starting running back.
That doesn't make sense, but I like it.
Pacheco is on waivers. Is he really coming back this year? Jesse, where I fall on this is no. I think he's coming back when they make the playoffs, but I don't think that they're going to risk his health for our fantasy seasons. I don't think that's...
Here's the other point. When you're it's definitely not before the fantasy playoffs start. So at that point, already half of your league can't pick him up. So I would, I'd wait on it. I really, because if he comes out of the championship game, there's a chance that no one will want him anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So don't waste the roster spot.
It is worth it. And prayers up to Josh Reynolds. Hopefully he's able to make a full recovery on that. And Cash, when it comes down to it, this is a steal, man. Like, I mean, if I can move into AJ Brown and give you two guys that I wasn't really thinking about starting and Garrett Wilson, you might get accused of collusion having Nico Puka Hill and AJ Brown. But the fact that people traded them to you means that there's no collusion. That means that people needed other players. That's not collusion. That's just people needing other stuff and you being the beneficiary of that. I love that team, dude. I love that team too. Would you trade away Tyreek for Puka? I wouldn't, Adam. I would keep Tyreek because, again, Puka had one of the best seasons of all time for a rookie. Brock Bowers is moving into that conversation for rookies as well. But Tyreek's been doing this for a long time. I think that Puka's situation, Tyreek's situation is not dependent upon his health. It's dependent on the health of other people. Puka's situation depends on his health. And so I much rather keep the guy whose situation could change, say they trade for a quarterback or they get a quarterback off waivers or somehow they go out and get Jameis Winston or whoever if Tua ends up getting hurt again. I'd rather have Tyreek. Do I think the Bears defense will do good this week? Jesse, if I'm being honest with you, Mariota's a total wild card. He can completely be utter trash, garbage, dumpster fire, or he could play well.
Yes, he can.
He's one of those players that I never understood his time in Tennessee. I never understood his time as a journeyman. I just never understand it. He was great to watch in college, but I never understood him. I'm okay rolling the Bears defense, but like I said, I think primarily Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, Jets and Lions are all good options this week. Hopkins was just magically cleared of the injury like Adams. Dude, it is a thing. This is I don't want to play with that quarterback-itis.
That's exactly what it is. I don't want to
play with that quarterback-itis. I'm not wasting my time. I'm a veteran. I deserve better. Numa, question about trading for Bijan earlier. They want Monty, Shakir, and Deontay for Bijan and Reed. Dude, if I can get Bijan and Jaden Reed and only trade Monty, Shakir, and Deontay, smash
yes,
that
100% accept that
right now. 100%. Numa, do that right now. Do that right now.
And then hope that your league commissioner doesn't see that you did it.
Big Mac. And we'll get back up to the deep dives here. And Joe, I'm going to use the restroom before we get into the deep dives. But need to start one running back, one wide receiver. Jonathan Taylor versus Houston, Hunt versus Vegas, Waddle versus Arizona, Brian Thomas versus Green Bay. Where I fall on this, while I really want to start Jonathan Taylor, I'm starting Kareem Hunt, and I'm starting Brian Thomas Jr. I know it's not a favorable decision from Joe's perspective, but that game script should favor the run game way later in that game for Hunt.
That part is true. I'm definitely going on Waddle, though. There's no way around that. And again, everything I said before about Brian Thomas is still, or about JT is still true. So
would I flex Hopkins over Dobbs? I'd still flex Dobbs. I would still flex Dobbs. We still need to know a little bit about how DeAndre Hopkins is going to fit into this lineup. So we did clear all those quick hits. Joe, let's hit up Steve's deep dive. Arrow, we're going to hit up your deep dive. I will be right back, and then we'll wrap up
the show. Gotcha. All right. So the two deep dives here in the last show. All right. So Steve, we actually kind of already started here with your question about your roster here with Dak, Nick, Stafford. And your question is should you do Debo or Chubb? The answer was Debo. Put Debo on the team. Here's the Debo. And what you want to know is other trade opportunities. So you just traded Chubb for Debo, which is awesome. So we're trying to get other trade opportunities. And I need to add Stafford to get Hurts in a trade. Yes, first off, if you can get Hurts in return, do it. You're in a situation where it's going to certainly give you a lot of power there. Hurts now becomes your instant starter. Quite frankly, if you need to include Dak in there too, you do that as well. The one that I do want to get off your team, though, looking at everything moving forward, Steve, is Kamara. We have all these injury reports coming out. He was a must sell for me in week 3 after his 2 big blow up games early. I don't see a whole lot of that left in the tank. So Kamara can be traded out there. You got a lot of depth in the back end of this team. So I'm looking at moving Kamara, possibly pairing him with a Scary Terry and going to get, I don't know, Saquon or Gibbs. And that's what I would want to do as an additional trade. You also could do, since you're only a one quarterback team and you're about to get Hurts for Stafford, I would do Kamara and Dak could get you something by themselves. You might not be able to get the Gibbs, but it's worth a conversation. That's the kind of area that I would want. You certainly get Kamara for Monty, which I see Monty better rest of the season as it is anyway. So
yeah,
I really like where you're at with the team. Kamara is the spot that I would want to move going for it. Summing up all of Steve's questions, he got some trades that went through there. He's got Chubb for Debo. And now it's just what else can we do to make the trades awesome?
So if I were adding Stafford, if I were moving Stafford to get into Hurts, I would definitely, if I were you, looking into and saying, okay,
Scary Terry.
I think that with you getting Debo, that it would be reasonable to either move Terry or BTJ with Stafford to get into a guy like Hurts. You might have to get a little bit more. You might have to offer a little bit more and offer a quarterback back.
But again, you're getting Hurts, so giving up Dak doesn't. Well, he's giving up Stafford, so you're not giving up two quarterbacks in one trade.
You're not. But yeah, I mean, I think Nick, Stafford, and Dak is going to be decent enough for you going forward. If I wanted to get into anything, I think it would be fair to say that you could move Kamara and one of the wide receivers, whichever one you want, Kamara, McConkey, maybe Terry, into Jalen Hurts. I think a Kamara and Terry into Jalen Hurts gives them enough value to make them even at least consider that. But if you're doing Stafford and Kamara for Jalen Hurts, I think that I would think about that as well. I think I think at the very least, Steve, that from everything that we've shared today, that your quarterback situation is, although on paper it doesn't feel right, and I own Dak as well in a 2-quarterback league, there are better days ahead. There should be at least some better days ahead for Dak. Nix, there's definitely going to be some better days ahead for Bo Nix as he grows and matures. Henry and Jones are good rolling out there. If you give up Kamara, you feel a little weak. So you might want to get some running back.
No, I'm only going to Kamara if I'm upgrading the position of Kamara.
Yeah. So
I don't want Kamara to be in the Hurts trade. I want it to be Stafford and Scary Terry, and then Kamara and Dak to upgrade.
Yeah, I don't know if that gets you there. But I do think that that's okay. I would start.
I'm not sure you need to do it.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, like I said, the reason I say it might get you there is I think that you're solid where you're at right now. And if anything, right, I know that we're dealing with Superflex, right? So it's good to have 3 quarterbacks. The ones that you have a lot of upwards potential moving forward. Now, if you do want to move on from Stafford because you might be concerned about injury or whatnot, like Joe said, a Stafford with Terry McLaurin could probably get the conversation going for Jalen Hurts. It could definitely get the conversation going for Jalen Hurts. Arrow here. I lost Godwin this week, and I traded Andrews for Olave. Any advice on my lineup? So Purdy and Tua, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with your quarterback situation moving forward. And I think in due time, you'll understand that you don't need to carry 2 quarterbacks. Lamb, Debo, Olave, Sutton, Shakir. Sutton is a sneaky play on that back end. He's closer for most people to being dropped than to started, but that's okay. He should have a good week this week and bolster right back up. With the injury here, this week you're a little bit shaky at your wide receiver starters. So, you're probably rolling out Lamb and Shakir, definitely. And then out of those 3, you're probably deciding which one is hurt in a better situation. I would probably play Sutton if Debo is not playing, and I would play Sutton over Olave this week. So I'd do Lamb, Shakir, and Sutton this week. But I think in the entirety of the season, you'll probably shape up a little bit better. Mix in with Aaron Jones and Connor and CMC. I think your running back room is stacked. One of the things, Aaron, that we talked about yesterday, I think I remember from your team, is trying to move Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's playoff schedule isn't as good as some other players. So if I can pair up Mixon and one of those wide receivers to potentially move, or at least begin the conversation to move into a Breece Hall, I'm okay in doing something like that as well. Because again, a guy like James Conner, for everybody in the chat that's still here, for a guy like James Conner, he hasn't played over 14 games basically in his career. Okay. So in any one season, I think there was one season where he did. So that's a concern for me going forward. By the time Conner goes out, you'd probably get CMC back. And the other thing with Conner is that Conner does start games, but there's a potential he gets hurt in the middle of them and then doesn't finish them. And then he continues to do that through the entirety of the year, which is super frustrating to own. So if it were me, I know the volume is really great for Conner right now, but I am okay moving off of Conner. And I love Joe Mixon. And I'd wait a couple more weeks if I were to move on from Joe Mixon. But if you wanted to get a deal done today, you could probably get yourself, or at least try to get yourself, and I would position myself to get guys that already had their bye weeks. So, I'm looking at Detroit players, right? So your Amon-Ra, your Gibbs, and your Montgomerys, right? I'm looking at who else has had buys, Joe?
Minnesota's had their bye.
Yeah, I'd be looking at
Dallas has had their bye.
Jeff.
So you know all the players that are on there, Arrow. But given the fact that you're in second, your team's in good shape. And as we look at this, but I want to upgrade one more turn. I want to upgrade your. I still want to upgrade your receiver room for that flex or third receiver, whichever one you're putting out there. And I do think that Sutton's gonna have a huge week this week. So what I think I might do is start Sutton, let the power of him flow through, and then maybe combine Sutton and a second piece. Maybe even Purdy if Tua balls out, or Tua, either one, to go get an upgraded receiver. I think that's how I would want to look at this team moving forward. Again, at 4-3, you're probably tied with all 7 other people for second place. It's gonna be a volatile spot. But that's what I would do for you guys. Chill. And for all the team players, we thank you guys for smashing that subscribe button. We had a huge week. I have to bounce right now, though.
Joe, yeah, we have to get through a couple more. We're going to get through a couple more quick hits, but Steve wants to know your opinion on who to start from his team. So Steve wants to know
who am I starting? So this week I'm starting Bo Nix. Their situation's awesome. Henry and Kamara, if you don't trade Kamara, would be my answer. You're definitely starting Tyreek. Bob is giving you every answer and a half for Brian Thomas. I love Ladd. I love his volume. And Scary Terry would come at the last of that group because of the quarterback situation. And again, I'm on Team Laporta. Bob isn't for the tight end. So recap: Dak, Henry, Kamara, Hill.
You said Nix.
McConkey,
now,
Laporta.
But Joe, who do you start in your super flex? Do you do Nix and Dak?
Yeah, Dak would be the second one.
So Nix and Dak. So we would start Nix and Dak in the in your super flex. There's reason to say, Steve, that Stafford would be a reasonable start, but you should try to move off of Stafford before tonight's game, most likely, if you can, Steve.
If you're trading him, then obviously if you get Hurts, it becomes Hurts and Dak would be the two I'd probably go with, or Hurts.
Yeah, and
I want to make sure I gave him enough answers. So the 3 receivers are Hill, McConkey, and BTJ, and then I give him the tight end. So then 2 normal flexes are going to be Aaron Jones is obviously going to be one of them, and Scary Terry will be the other.
Yeah. And as we finish up here, Big Mac, do I still fire up Puka over Hopkins? Yes, I do, Cash. Big Mac, this is not worth it. B5 is absolutely right here. If you're not in a league that is 14-team league, AR is totally droppable. Most quarterbacks that aren't scoring within the top 12 are droppable, similar to Patrick Mahomes. I would not trade JT for HN and Anthony Richardson. I would totally go out if I was moving JT for HN. I'd need something better than a quarterback. Don't give me back end quarterback pieces. It just doesn't work. Steve, I hope that helped you out. In my opinion, I think Nix and Dak are great plays this week. Henry and Jones are also must starts for me. Hill, BTJ, and Ladd are must starts for me. I think out of your situation there's reason to believe that Ertz will have a good game, but Laporta will probably have as good of a game as Ertz can have as well. So thinking about that as we move forward. And Xenon, final question of the night here from Xenon. I'm trading away Kupp, Kyron, Swift, and Ingram for Saquon, CD, and Brian Robinson Jr. Should I instead move Kittle instead of Ingram to go for it through? I have Ingram, Kittle, and Kelsey. You're welcome, Jesse. You're welcome. So as it falls here, I think if you don't like, two ways to view this, Xenon. I'm really high on Kittle rest of season. I also like Evan Ingram rest of season, and Kelsey is in the same conversation, but not as high as Kittle and Ingram. What we get from Kittle is the potential for some boom games. When we look at this without Ayuk now, with Jennings taking over that role potentially, with Debo being with pneumonia and Pearsall, the whole CMC situation, Kittle's going to have a lot of opportunities. Don't get that twisted. He's going to have a lot of opportunities, but he is a big health risk. Ingram isn't as big of a health risk. He already moved past an injury so far this year. So it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there. As we look at the rest of the season in terms of, what does this schedule look like for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Let's pull it up real quick. Let's pull it up real quick for you, Xenon. Looking through the rest of the season, and we can play around, with this another time as well, but Eagles, Packers, Vikings, Lions, Texans, Titans, Jets, Raiders, Colts. There's going to be a lot of times there where Evan Ingram is probably going to be relied upon to get them back into games or win the field position battle. So I think that Ingram is solid. With Kittle here, let's look up the Niners games. I don't know them off the top of my head right now. Niners schedule. When we look at the Niners as it goes for George Kittle here, and like I said, I think both of these tight ends are worth owning. We have Bucks, we have Cowboys, Bucks, Seahawks, Packers, Bills, Bears, Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Niners. All of those are opportunities as well. I think if it were me, I would still move Ingram for those guys, and that would be the deal that I would get done. I would just do Kupp, Kyron, Swift, and Ingram. But if you have any reservations about Kittle's health and you wanted to put Kittle in there, just remember Kittle has been a top 3 or 4 tight end, barring injuries, for most of the last 5 years. You can go back. Kelsey has been a number 1 tight end. Ingram has had great games. Yeah, Bryce, you can go ahead and ask it, Bryce. But that is something to consider as well. Okay, so just keep your head on the swivel with that. If you move Kittle, you're giving up top 3, top 4 potential finishing the season. Ingram, I believe, finished the season as the number 1 tight end last year, very close to it, but got a lot of volume. That volume is different this year. So I'd be okay moving on from Ingram, Xenon. Jason, trade Debo, Olave, and ETN for DK, Dobbins, and Dell. So Jason, this is really nice trade here for you. Just understand that Dobbins is also still an injury risk. He's looking really good. I love J.K. Dobbins' rest of season. I'm not as high on ETN. I also don't think that Tank Dell is a necessity, especially when Nico comes back. I don't think they've really figured out how they want to use Tank Dell with all of those wide receivers there. Trading Debo, I think moving on from Debo is a smart play, but also you're moving into DK. Both of those guys are probably going to be, dealing with injuries or lingeringness from their injuries for the next couple of weeks. So this comes down to, for me, over the next couple of weeks, do I want Olave and ETN or Dobbins and Dell? And I think at least in the short term, Dobbins and Dell win that for me. But in the long term, DK, Dobbins, and Dell should win that. It all depends on, what you see as being the injury or the illness that puts it over the top for you. Because you've probably been sitting here with Olave for a couple weeks now and wanting to move on from him. Bryce, one more question. Lay it on us, Bryce. And for anybody out there looking at injuries and injury reports, I know I said yesterday that I would roll out Ramondre over roll out Ramondre into the game this week. I'm second guessing that now with the foot injury. So keep your head on a swivel. You're welcome, Jason. Keep your head on a swivel about that one. Ramondre dealing with that injury again. I don't know where that team's heading, but Drake May looks really good. Bryce, I have running backs Pollard, JT, Najee, Jacobs, London, Amon, Flowers, Reed, Devontae, and Myers. Love and Murray. Nobody wants to trade though, Bryce. I get it. I get what you're dealing with here, Bryce. So I'm in a league as well. One of my home leagues. One of my longest standing leagues. One of the guys is trying to move off Chase, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to sell him for free." And I'm like, I get that, I understand. But when I look at my roster, I want to keep myself in a good position moving forward for the rest of the year. So, looking at your team, JT and Jacobs as a starting 2 running backs, I think is going to be relatively solid. They're going to get a decent amount of volume. Najee does tend to heat up and does tend to be a little bit better and more competitive when Warren is around. So that's going to be kind of a blessing for you. For anybody out there right now, if Warren is on your waiver wire, I'm going out there and picking up Warren. There's a lot of people that I would drop for Jaylen Warren right now. I think that Jaylen Warren is going to be a nice hold and back-end flex play for some games later down in the season. As it goes, I love that you have Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is a performer. He does really well. It's just unfortunate this Tennessee team isn't good. A fun fact that I was listening to the other day is if you look at his yards after contact, is that almost all of his yards, minus like 14 yards for Tony Pollard, have been after contact. That means Tennessee's line is absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. So Tony Pollard is doing what he's doing of his own volition, of his own skill. So I think that having Tony Pollard there is really nice on a week-to-week basis. Looking at your wide receivers here, London, Amon, Flowers, and Reed. Amon-Ra, London, and Reed should probably see your lineup more weeks than not if you start 3 wide receivers. I know that we're not super high on Drake London, but I can't ignore the volume. I really can't ignore the volume that he's getting, Bryce. And while I'm not confident starting him every single week, I can't ignore that volume. Even if you take out the game where he was targeted a lot and had like 150 yards, you can't ignore that amount of volume. He's in the top 5 in terms of volume. You can't ignore it. When it comes to tight ends here, hey, Slim, to wrap up the show. So as we wrap up, I'll get to your questions here. Just talking to Bryce a little bit. When we look at it right here, your quarterback room, Love and Murray, this is going to be fine. I just don't like carrying those 2 quarterbacks. But with you saying, you can't get any trades done, these guys don't want to probably move off of Hill, Jefferson, Lamb, and Chase. Those are the big top dog wide receivers, and you're going to have to make an offer that they can't refuse, right? And an offer that they can't refuse would probably be something that you don't want to give up. And that's kind of where I'm at in my situation here. I think your team is solid. And, it's really unfortunate. And we can talk more about it next week too, Bryce, because this is our last show of the week. We'll be back on Monday at 3:45. But let me think about it this weekend, Bryce. But for right now, I would try to keep hammering, decide what one of those tight ends you want, and really keep hammering the concept here of either a 3-for-2 or a 2-for-1 or even a volume-based 3-for-1, which is harder to get through because the guy's going to have to drop pieces. Include Najee in the deal. Talk about Flowers or Reed in that deal, although I like Reed rest of season. And either Bowers or Kittle. Probably Kittle if you like Bowers' volume as well. So that's kind of where I fall on that right here when we talk today, Bryce. And you might, and if you type in, if you type it into the chat and we can talk about it on Monday, what offers have you tried so we can piece together something good for you, Bryce. Will, pick one. Malik Neighbors, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams, Amari Cooper, Javonte Williams, Daniel flex spot. I like a lot of those players. If I can flex Malik Neighbors, that's sexy. But again, Joey Porter's a great cornerback. The game script will be in the Chargers' favor, I believe, in this game, which will mean a lot of running from J.K. Dobbins. The Saints aren't particularly good. Javonte Williams, and we said this earlier in the show about Javonte Williams. So if you want to go back, Will, and look at this about Javonte Williams, everybody and their mother who's in the fantasy community this week, and especially this weekend, will tell you Javonte Williams is a smash play. There's reason to believe that it will be a smash play for Javonte Williams. However, the thing that I want to caution you on with Javonte Williams is that, yes, he is explosive. He can create explosive plays. He's not generating a lot of 5+ yard plays. He does a lot through the air for this team. And Carolina's bad against the run. But also, teams have accumulated these numbers through multiple running backs. Just as an example, Atlanta did it with Bijan, and Atlanta did it with Tyler Gill, almost 195 yards between those two backs. If you look at the running back room for the Denver Broncos, you've got not only Javonte Williams, you have Jaleel McLaughlin, you have Audric Estime. You also have Bo Nix. You go into the stats, Bo Nix has 46 less rushing yards than Javonte Williams this year. So, with all that said, Javonte Williams might be a letdown this week. There's a very good chance that he could do very well, but he might be a letdown this week. So, if you listened to us earlier, Joe is suggesting that this is a good spot to trade Javonte Williams because you have a great matchup ahead. People want in on this matchup. He just had a great game. You probably, if he has a great game again, you probably are going to think to yourself that you want to move on to him. We're not quite sure if this is a mirage or not. Also, Denver's looked good over the past couple of weeks, but will they continue to be able to do this? Carolina's susceptible. In my mind here, how I would order this, Will, as I would go Amari, JK, and then Javonte. Those would be the three that I would order. I would flex Amari Cooper. I would try to find a spot for JK in my roster this week. And I think Javonte Williams is the red herring. You can come back next week and tell me I'm wrong, and I'm okay with that. But the data is saying that, there is more than one running back in this Denver backfield that could put pain onto the Carolina Panthers, and it doesn't have to be Javonte Williams. And the other thing about Javonte Williams is that Javonte Williams does catch a decent amount of passes. He hasn't over the last couple of weeks, but Carolina doesn't let up a lot of passes to running backs. So that value is going to go away. If they're winning, the odds that they're winning are pretty high. But will they roll out Audric Estime? Will they put more in for Jaleel McLaughlin? I can't put a guess on that, but I'm not as high on Javonte Williams as most other people in the community are. Slim, should I start Addison or Bigsby? I think, it's reasonable to think that Addison could have a good game tonight. This is a team that it could. Thursday games have been weird. We've had Kirk Cousins throw for over 500 yards. We've had the emergence of some other players and the going into the sewers for other players. I think I'd be rolling Addison this week if I'm concerned about Bigsby's volume. And I am concerned about Bigsby's volume because what we know about Tank Bigsby is that, yes, he can break off a 65-yard run. That is unequivocally the case. But I don't know how much Jacksonville will be running in the second half of this game. So if Bigsby ends up doing all that in the first half, great. If not, I don't see where his value is there. So that's where I'm at. Incognito, do I start Puka tonight or Worthy? We talked a lot about Puka throughout this episode. Puka has been a major focus. Joe had to go. He had to go to axe throwing 5:30. We're about to head off today, Incognito. So feel free to go back and watch the rest of the episode where we talked a lot about a lot of these players. But for right now, I think we're on Puka. Xavier Worthy is still a little bit of a ways out. He's getting more plays designed for him. He is looking better, but he's not getting the volume. Puka is going to be a good enough play. However, my expectations for Puka this week are not very high. There's a good chance that he can exceed expectations, but when you have news that says, "Oh, he's a little bit ways out from starting," and then all of a sudden he's active tonight, active doesn't mean you're going to play a lot. So for anybody rolling out Puka tonight, that's kind of the situation you're walking into. But to that end, starting Puka or starting Worthy, that's kind of the same situation you're walking into. Worthy's going to play, but the volume is a concern. Puka's going to play, but how's it going to look? I would tend to lean toward Puka over Worthy for that scenario, right? And Jerry here, final question of the night. Do I like Darnold versus the Rams or Baker versus the Falcons? If you talk to Joe, this is a nice revenge game for Baker Mayfield. While Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are out, the narrative here switches to Rachaad White, Jalen McMillan, and how can Baker Mayfield right this ship? Currently, you too, Incognito. Absolutely. Jerry, where we fall at on this discussion is that we are on Baker over Darnold this week. I know that the optics don't feel, on paper might not feel right in that scenario, but it is reasonable to think that Baker Mayfield will be capable of putting up 18 plus points. And we have Sam Darnold somewhere around 15-ish points. So not huge games for either ones, but this is definitely a get-right game for Tampa Bay after losing their wide receivers. And it definitely, what is Baker Mayfield made out of? And it'll be nice to see a successful Baker Mayfield without those two wide receivers to kind of prove to Cleveland that they made a huge mistake. Already they made a huge mistake by dumping Mayfield to go after Deshaun Watson. What a huge mistake that was. So everybody in the chat, thanks for joining us today. We'll be back on Monday at 3:45. We air Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 3:45 to about 6 o'clock-ish, sometimes later than that. Joe usually goes out early around 5:30 on Thursday for axe throwing. We wish everybody the best of luck. Bring your trades next week. Let us know how you did. We'll be really curious about how these players coming back from injuries do. And we are hoping, with all hope, that no more big injuries happen this week. Cross your arms, your fingers, your legs, your ears, your eyes, that nobody gets injured this week that is fantasy relevant. So have a good night, everybody. Good luck and have a great weekend.